Hi, my name is Amber Rose McNeill, and I am the director of Andrew Ginger Likes Dogs. This is a queer horror movie made about kind of like the disillusionment of dating in the digital age.
Well, thank you for sending us your film.
Thank you so much for accepting.
You've had, I believe, three films in our past festivals. 2 Minutes on High, Normal Porn for Normal People, I Love You Very Much Redux, and this is completely different than any of the work that you've sent us before because this is a narrative.
It is, yeah. I think I might have had one more film. Did Maina Hent? Did I have
Yeah,
that?
that too as well.
Yeah, I mean, like it's different from all of them. Two of them are appropriated media with like a very strong social commentary. Oh, sorry, three of them. One of them is like a has a strong feminist commentary as well. Mina Hent was kind of like softer and very like diaristic. But Andrew Ginger Likes Dogs is like a full-on narrative. It is definitely different to my previous work with your festival.
And you wrote it, produced it, and directed it.
I did, yes. I wrote, produced, directed. I was the intimacy coordinator. I'm sure I wore some other hats in between, but yeah, I definitely had a lot to do with the filmmaking process.
So, what's the difference between doing? I don't want to mischaracterize your other films, but I view them as more like collage, social commentary, and this is full on narrative with beginning, middle, and end story arc. You wrote this, what was your creative process in switching gears to write this?
I actually wrote this before making kind of like my mosaic social commentary films. So it was sort of like switching gears the other way to when the pandemic hit, like we couldn't film. And so I started working with appropriated media, and that was kind of the switch for me. Previous to that, I had been a narrative filmmaker. My narratives were sort of like a little bit weird or kind of out of the box in comparison to kind of like what I was brought up with and like my first education in film, which was very kind of like commercial mainstream. So I was always the weird kid. I mean, this film looks a lot more normal in comparison to my other films because I kind of embraced the weirdness when I moved to Milwaukee. But yeah, I mean, I'm getting back into writing narrative. So, I mean, there really is a switching of gears between making like experimental docs that are like mosaic or with sampled or appropriated media because you're sort of completely in control. It can be like a very solitary process if you want it to be. Whereas making narrative films involves a lot of people. And I had like, for a small film, I had a fairly large crew of probably about 30 people in
30.
maybe 20. I mean, that's including kind of like pre-production, production, and post-production. So probably about like at least 20, which is a lot for like micro budget small films. So, you know, switching from this like very solitary, like I'm in control completely of the narrative and the pieces and all of that kind of thing, it is definitely like a very different process from kind of creating something and then bringing it to a group of people, and then getting them to work with you and collaborating together to make this like, you know, one thing.
This film has had a pretty good, successful run in the festival circuit. You played at Red Movie Awards in France,
Hmm.
Wild Sound Film and Screenplay Festival in Canada, Perth Queer Film Festival in Australia, the New York Horror Film Awards, Lit Scare uh, over in United Kingdom, Shock Fest, which is a big horror festival out in California. So you've had a really good run with this film. Is this the last stop with it?
Yeah, this is like the I was trying to think of an analogy to like American football, but I don't know anything about American football. This I don't know, this is like the coming home or the homecoming. That's what I was trying to think of. This is like the homecoming for the film. It was shot in LA, but like all of the post-production or the majority of the post-production happened in Milwaukee. So it
So
really
the actors are from LA?
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah. Brent Roberts and Travis Grossi are both from LA, yeah. I'm not sure if they're both still in LA at the moment, but they were in LA at the time that we filmed. But yeah, it has been a successful run. It's been a really nice run. It can be very difficult with appropriated media or mosaic films to kind of get them into festivals, but with like a narrative film and a queer film, because queer film is becoming kind of more popular and more mainstream and more accepted. Yeah, we had an amazing run with this film. We've won a bunch of awards, which was fantastic, and it really feels amazing to be having the last like theater screening, being at MKA Shorts Fest and being here in Milwaukee. Um, where I call home. So yeah, it feels really special to be having the last theater screening here.
The emerging trend I see, and you are very well aware of this too because you dabble in it. Um, Horror films, more women I see are directing horror films. There are more queer directors directing horror films too, because horror films, when I grow, I'm much older than you, because you could tell with the white beard. Um, Growing up, horror was basically a man's genre, and now you're seeing different points of view come in.
Yeah, and I really love that. I mean, I grew up watching 80s horror, which, was for the most part quite misogynistic, or at least like the formula is now seen as being misogynistic, and some of it was very misogynistic. And growing up queer, and this is like across generations, a lot of queer and trans people feel very connected to horror as a genre. And I think that's why we're seeing so many more women and femmes directing, so many more queer and trans people directing horror films, because we all felt really outcast and sometimes like not at home in our own bodies. And so we felt this connection to horror, sometimes to the villains. And we became filmmakers, and then we started working in horror, or we became horror filmmakers. So I think even though it may seem a little bit strange to some people, like horror is very close to a lot of the horror genre is very close to a lot of queer and trans people's hearts.
Hmm, that's interesting. I never thought of it that way as maybe finding some connection with the villain and all that as well. I never thought of that. I mean, it's a genre that's grown in popularity. I think over the years with the A24 type films and the Blumhouse films, and now Sinners is huge, and that's not a typical horror film from what I understand because it's a lot of the Black experience dealing with it in there.
Yeah, I mean, and like I speak from kind of like a queer trans perspective, but like yeah, a lot of Black, Indigenous, other filmmakers of color also um are have probably felt connections and are connecting with the genre in ways of making as well. I mean, obviously I can't speak for people outside of my like own communities and identities, but I mean, you know villains were very queer coded for a long time, and it was quite intentional. I think around like McCarthy era, the Hays Code, all that kind of stuff, we saw a lot of like very camp villains.
Hmm.
And even though that did carry over into slasher films, like if you look back at a lot of slasher films, a lot of the villains are very camp, even if
Hmm.
they may be within these misogynistic kind of like tropey films. But yeah, so a lot of people from minority communities were had connections to horror, or maybe didn't, and maybe wanted to like come in and make something that broke those tropes and broke those stereotypes, and had a different perspective. And I think that's amazing for the horror genre. Prestige horror, as you were saying, A24 and all of those companies have, I mean, that's definitely helped push kind of like a different kind of horror into the mainstream. But I really think that it's like marginalized communities who are, and filmmakers who are really kind of like at the forefront of something that's like very special and very new and very interesting, as well as having a lot of depth when it comes to the horror genre.
Well, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.